Career mode. It is personally my favourite mode on Rugby League games, and I'm sure it is for many of you too. With the new Rugby League Live 5 game coming out later this year, hopefully, I want to see significant improvements made to career mode to make it a more enjoyable experience all around. And I'm going to be talking about those improvements in this video. So the first improvement I want to see in the next Rugby League video games career mode is an overhaul to the ratings progression system. This is an issue that has plagued the past couple of Rugby League games. Within Rugby League Live 3, the base ratings were so unrealistic. It was to the point where if a player was rated, an 83 overall, they would be a reserve grade player. There was way too many high-rated players, and it just was not realistic. In Rugby League Live 4, the base ratings were a lot better, a lot more realistic, but if you start up a career mode simulator year, there are players in their 30s who have jumped by 10 overall, and it's just not realistic, and it takes away from that realistic, challenging aspect of trying to build a squad and, manage players getting older, managing these young players, as I said, and developing them. It just sort of takes away from that aspect. And I think in any good sports career mode, one of the crucial components is that development of players and that ratings progression and regression as well. So what I want to see is a more streamlined, realistic ratings progression system. For example, I use Isaac Tago, probably going to be starting for Penrith this year, not really broken through into the NRL yet as a consistent first grader. Will probably do so by the end of the year. Let's just say, for argument's sake, in the next game, he is a 77 overall in his base rating. If this is Rugby League Live 4, after the first season, he's probably up at around an 87. That's unrealistic, right? Sure, he may have a really good year for Penrith in real life, and then on the next game be rated an 87, but in terms of a career mode, you need something a bit more challenging. So I'd say his overall should progress to a max 82. And I'd say that probably gets impacted if a player gets selected for Origin, for example, or whatever. But we do need something where it's a bit more challenging and it's a bit more of a slower progression. I'd say for a young player, their maximum should be increasing by 5 overall rating points in a season. And with older players, they slowly regress. Maybe they start losing 2 overall, or if they have a bad season, they do drop down by 5, or if they're injured during a season, their rating does go down as they get older. The way I do it is up until 25, a player can progress in terms of overall, I'd say. Then between 25 and 28, that is their peak of their career, which is pretty realistic, I'd say, for most NRL players. Between 25 and 28, that's their peak. And then maybe from 29 onwards, you can start to see that slow regression. That's how I do it anyway. Next, I want to see more of an emphasis based on feeder-club relationships. We saw this trialed, I guess you could say, or very basically added into the game in Rugby League Live 4, may have even been in Rugby League Live 3, where if in a career mode you had players who weren't playing first grade, they would be playing for your reserve grade team and being able to develop through there, which was good, but I want to see that built upon. I want a more active relationship between your club and said feeder club. I want to be getting weekly updates on how they are going, and it's not a case where you have to go and manually look to see how your feeder club is performing and that it really has no impact on your team whatsoever. I want to be receiving updates, getting notifications every week saying, this is how the club's going. Well, not saying this is how the club's going, I should say, with a result from that weekend and maybe a list of standout performers and the impact on those players, at least players that I've got in my top 30. And that's something I want to see added as well to help this, an actual top 30. So when you're signing a player in their contract, you should be able to have an option to add them to your top 30, which will probably mean you have to pay them a little bit more. Or if they're a development player, obviously I'd say if a player's over 23, let's say you don't have the option to sign them as a development player, or you sign someone on a trade and trial at the start of the year, whatever. I want to see those options added as well, which will also help determine which players are going to be playing reserve grade, and your top 30 players that will be playing in reserve grade have more of an emphasis put on them. You're going to be getting updates on them more regularly. So that's definitely something I want to see in the next game. To me, a major problem that has plagued every Rugby League video game's career mode throughout the entire franchise really is the lack of a personality and identity associated with your coach. At the very most, in the past, you've been able to give your coach a name, but never been able to create a coach, and that is what I want to see introduced to the next game. There would be more of an emotional attachment. I guess there'd be more care from the player put into what they're doing in the career mode because they've physically created their coach. They've created themselves most likely as a coach and put themselves into the game, and I think that's something that definitely needs to be added into the next game. And last but not least, I want to see cutscenes added into career mode in Rugby League Live 5. Now, you may be thinking it's too much, that it costs too much money, but I'm not talking about like a story mode or anything. I'm not even talking about interactive cutscenes. I'm talking about the basics, really, just to add that little bit of realism to the game. For example, in past Rugby League games, you've had a different animation at the start and end of a game if you're playing in a grand final. It is possible to have these different quick little animations put in. For example, before a game, if you're playing a big game, you see your coach that you've created, being interviewed by Fox Sports or Channel 9 before the game. And there's no text there. You don't have to answer any questions or anything. It's literally like a 3 to 5 second thing where you see your coach being interviewed. I think that'd be pretty cool. Or before a big game, you see your team training on the field for a couple of seconds before the game starts. Or you're revving up your team back in the sheds, or after a game, whether you win or lose, your coach reacts differently. You could be giving your team a spray, you could be congratulating them, and you're all clapping, and you can physically see that. A game that's done this really well are the FIFA games. If you are playing in a big game in career mode, whether that be player or coach career mode, there is that cutscene of your team training before the game, and you usually see the other team as well, or you see your team getting off the team bus or something like that. Or after a game, you are clapping in the sheds with your teammates. It's simple stuff like that. It'll only take a couple of seconds on the screen. You don't have to hear any dialogue or anything. The commentators can be talking over it. And this is something I really think is doable for whoever the developers are, because as little a budget as True Blue had in the past, they were still able to give us these little animations, but they just weren't enough for me. I liked how, as I said, there was that different animation before a State of Origin or a grand final, but I just want to see these little animations peppered throughout and make certain games feel bigger. For example, if you're coaching the Roosters in a game against the Rabbitohs, you get a few little cutscenes before and after the game. I think as well that just adds to the realism, and it'd be really cool to see. Well, that does it for this video. First of all, I want to thank you guys for the support that you've shown on these Rugby League Live 5 speculation videos, I guess you could say. Keep liking them, keep commenting and interacting with them, and I'll definitely continue to put more out in the lead up to Rugby League Live 5's release. But other than that, comment what you'd like to see in Rugby League Live 5's career mode down below. I'll be sure to check those out. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this around with your mates. I'll see you in the next one.